The November wind cut through downtown Kansas City like a blade, carrying the scent of barbecue and the distant echoes of victory from Arrowhead Stadium. Travis Kelce had just finished the most important meeting of his life, finalizing plans for a $50 million community center that would transform Union Station into a beacon of hope for at-risk youth across Missouri. But as he stepped out of the gleaming glass building, adjusting his black wool coat against the bitter cold, Travis had no idea that his past was about to collide with his present in the most devastating way possible. "Mr. Kelce, the architects are thrilled about the youth programs," said David Chen, his business manager, jogging to catch up. "They want to break ground by spring." Travis smiled, pulling his chief's beanie down against the wind. "Tell them I want it operational by next fall." Kids in this city can't wait for bureaucracy. The irony of those words would haunt him in the coming hours. As they walked toward the parking garage, the familiar sounds of Union Station surrounded them. The rumble of train, the chatter of late commuters, the distant hum of traffic on Main Street. This place held so many memories for Travis. It was here, 15 years ago, that he'd said goodbye to the only person who'd ever truly understood him. That's when he heard it. "Please, anything helped. God bless you." The voice stopped him dead in his track. Softer now, worn down by years of hardship, but unmistakably familiar. Travis felt his blood turn to ice as he slowly turned toward the sound. There, sitting against the cold stone wall of Union Station, with a worn baseball cap at her feet, was Ophelia Ravencroft, the same girl who used to correct his calculus homework with gentle patience, the same girl who'd worn his Letterman jacket to prom and made him promise to dance with her grandmother, the same girl who'd cried when he got drafted by the Chiefs because it meant leaving Kansas City for training camp. But this wasn't the Ophelia he remembered. Her auburn hair, once lustrous and perfect, hung in matted strands around a face that looked decades older than her 29 years. Dark circles shadowed eyes that used to sparkle with dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse. Her clothes, a torn winter jacket over layers of mismatched sweaters, hung loose on a frame that seemed to have been carved away by unspeakable hardship. "Oh my God," David whispered, following Travis's frozen stare. "Do you know her?" Travis couldn't speak. His throat felt like it was closing as memories crashed over him like a tsunami. Ophelia laughing as they shared nachos at Arrowhead Stadium. Ophelia studying nursing textbook while he practiced throwing roots in her backyard. Ophelia at the airport, tears streaming down her face as she made him promise to come back for her. "I'll wait for you," she had whispered against his chest that night. "No matter how long it takes, we're going to change the world together, remember?" Now she was here, 15 years later, reduced to begging for change outside the very station where he'd kissed her goodbye and promised to build a future worthy of her dream. Travis took a step forward, then stopped. What could he possibly say? How do you bridge 15 years of silence with someone who once knew your every secret, your every fear, your every hope? "Travis," David's voice seemed to come from a million miles away. "Your car's this way." But Travis wasn't listening. He was watching Ophelia count the few coins in her cap with hands that trembled from cold, hunger, or something much. Hands that used to trace patterns on his chest while they talked about all the lives they'd saved together. Hands that had once held acceptance letters to 3 different nursing schools. A businessman in an expensive suit walked past, deliberately avoiding eye contact with Ophelia. A couple with designer shopping bags stepped around her like she was invisible. Travis felt rage building in his chest, not at them, but at himself. Where had he been while the woman he'd once planned to marry fell this far? He pulled out his phone with shaking fingers, scrolling through his contacts until he found Marcus William, a private investigator who'd helped him with security issues in the past. Travis typed quickly, "Emergency. Need everything on Ophelia Ravencroft, age 29, grew up Kansas City. Last 15 years, tonight." "Mr. Kelce?" David was getting nervous, glancing around for paparazzi. "We really should go. If someone sees you here, give me a minute." Travis approached slowly, his heart hammering so hard he was sure she could hear it. When he was close enough to see the freckles that still dotted her nose, he knelt down and placed a $100 bill in her cap. Ophelia looked up, and their eyes met for the first time in 15 years. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. Her lips parted in shock, then twisted into something between a smile and a grimace of pain. "Travis Kelce," she whispered. her voice hoarse and broken. The golden boy himself, Ophelia. His voice cracked on her name. Jesus Christ, what happened to you? She laughed, but it was a sound completely devoid of joy. Life happened, Travis. Real life. The kind they don't show in your Nike commercials or your charity galas. He wanted to reach out, to touch her face, to somehow erase the years of pain etched into her features. But the distance between them felt wider than an ocean. You said you'd come back, she continued, her voice barely audible over the station's ambient noise. I waited. God help me. I waited until waiting became pathetic, and pathetic became desperate, and desperate became this. She gestured at herself with bitter, devastating self-awareness. Ophelia, I tried to call. When? The question came out like a challenge. When exactly did you try to call? Because I had the same phone number for 8 years after you left, same address for 6. I worked at the same hospital for 4 years, Travis. The same hospital where you donated money for that wing dedication ceremony in 2019. Travis felt the world tilt beneath him. You were there? I was working the night shift in the ER. I watched you on the local news, cutting ribbons and giving speeches about helping people. I was 20 feet away from you, and you had no idea I existed. The weight of that revelation crushed him. While he'd been playing football and making millions and building his carefully curated public image, Ophelia had been right there, working, struggling, slowly falling apart, while he lived in a bubble of celebrity and success. Tell me how to fix this, he said, desperately. You can't. Ophelia looked away, focusing on the distant trains pulling into the station. Some things break so completely that all the money in the world can't put them back together. Some people fall so far that there's no climbing back up. But even as she spoke those words, Travis was already formulating a plan. Not a simple handout or a guilt-driven charity case, but something bigger, something that would honor what they'd once meant to each other while acknowledging the devastating reality of who they'd become. His phone buzzed. A text from Market. Found preliminary info. This is bad, Travis. Really bad. Call me immediately. Travis looked at Ophelia one more time, memorizing her face as if trying to reconcile the girl in his memories with the broken woman before him. This isn't over, he said quietly. Ophelia met his eyes again, and for just a moment, he saw a flicker of the girl who used to believe that love could conquer anything. It is for me, Travis. It's been over for a very long time. As he walked away, Travis felt something fundamental shift inside him. The community center, the business meetings, the endorsement deals, none of it mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was 15 feet behind him, sitting in the cold, and he had absolutely no idea how to save someone who didn't want to be saved. But he was damn sure going to try. Travis sat in his Range Rover in the Union Station parking garage, engine running but going nowhere. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had gone white. Through the concrete pillars, he could still see Ophelia's silhouette against the station wall, a ghost from his past made devastatingly real. His phone rang. Marcus William. Travis, you sitting down? Marcus's voice carried the weight of someone who'd delivered bad news professionally for 20 years. Because what I found about Ophelia Ravencroft is going to destroy you. Just tell me. She graduated summa cum laude from UMKC's nursing program in 2015. Got her dream job at Children's Mercy Hospital Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. Top of her class, exemplary reviews, beloved by patient staff. Then her world exploded. Travis closed his eyes, bracing himself. What happened? Her younger brother, Logan. You remember him? Travis did remember. Logan Ravencroft, 8 years old when Travis left for the NFL. All freckles and hero worship, always begging to throw the football with them in the backyard. Ophelia's pride and joy, the baby brother she'd helped raise after their dad abandoned the family. Logan got diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia when he was 16, Marcus continued. Aggressive form. Ophelia burned through her savings, paying for experimental treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Took out loans, maxed credit cards, sold everything she owned, including her car. Did he? He died 18 months later. But here's where it gets worse, Travis. The medical bills bankrupted her. She lost her apartment, had to move back in with her mother who was working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Ophelia started taking prescription painkillers to cope with the grief and stress. Travis felt sick. And the pills weren't enough. She started stealing from the hospital pharmacy to feed her addiction, got caught, lost her nursing license, faced criminal charges, did 6 months in county jail, came out to find her mother had died of a heart attack while she was inside. The world spun around Travis. While he'd been signing multi-million-dollar contracts and dating Instagram models, Ophelia had been fighting a war she couldn't win, losing everyone she loved, one devastating blow at a time. "There's more," Marcus said grimly. "The house, the family home where you two used to study together, got foreclosed on while she was in jail. Everything they owned got auctioned off to pay medical debts. Ophelia's been homeless for 3 years, in and out of rehab programs that don't work, because she keeps getting kicked out of shelters for relapse." Travis ended the call and stumbled out of his car. The November air felt like ice in his lungs as he walked back toward Union Station. Ophelia was still there, her cap now containing a few more coins from sympathetic commuters who had no idea they were helping a former pediatric nurse who'd once dedicated her life to saving children. "You came back," she said without looking up. "I told you it was over. Tell me about Logan." The name hit her like a physical blow. Her whole body tensed, and when she looked at him, her eyes were blazing with a pain so raw it was almost unbearable to witness. "How do you know about Logan?" Travis sat down beside her on the cold concrete, ignoring the stares of passing strangers. "I made some calls. Ophelia, why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you tell me what was happening?" "Tell you what?" Her voice was rising, attracting unwanted attention. "Tell Travis Kelce, NFL superstar, that his ex-girlfriend's life was falling apart, that I needed money to save my dying brother, that I was so desperate I was considering calling you for a handout like some pathetic groupie. I would have helped. You know I would have helped. Would you?" The question came out like a challenge. "Because I did try, Travis. I tried calling you in 2018 when Logan was in the ICU and I'd run out of options. You know what happened?" Travis felt his stomach drop. "Your assistant, some woman named Jessica, told me you were in training camp and couldn't be disturbed by personal matter. She said if it was a real emergency to contact your publicist, but that you didn't handle requests for money directly." Ophelia. I hung up, sat in that hospital waiting room and realized that the boy I used to love had become so insulated from real life that his own staff didn't recognize my name, that I'd become just another stranger trying to get something from Travis Kelce. Travis felt like he'd been punched in the gut. He remembered that assistant, hired by his management company specifically to filter out what they called distractions from his past. How many calls, he screamed. How many people who'd once mattered to him had tried to reach out while he was living in his bubble of fame and success? I never got the message. I figured as much. Or figured you just didn't care anymore. Either way, Logan died 3 weeks later, and I realized that the Travis I used to know, the one who would have driven all night to help a friend, was gone, replaced by some corporate version who was too important for his own history. The accusation hung between them like a blade. Travis wanted to defend himself, to explain how overwhelming his life had become, how many people wanted things from him, how hard it was to distinguish between genuine need and exploitation. But looking at Ophelia's face, seeing the depth of loss and betrayal written there, all his excuses crumbled to dust. "After Logan died, I completely fell apart," Ophelia continued, her voice hollow. "Started stealing pills from the hospital to numb the pain, got caught, lost everything. Ended up in jail while my mother worked herself to death trying to pay off the medical debts I'd accumulated." She pulled up her sleeve, revealing track marks on her wrist, some old and faded, others disturbingly fresh. "This is what grief looks like when you don't have millions of dollars to cushion the fall. This is what happens to people like me, while people like you play games for a living and pretend it matters." Travis was on his feet, pacing, his mind reeling. "How do I fix this? How do I help you?" "You don't." Ophelia looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much, lost too much, to believe in rescue anymore. "This isn't a football game, Travis. You can't just throw a touchdown pass and win. Some problems don't have solutions. Some people can't be saved. I don't accept that. Then you're still the same naive kid who thought love could conquer anything." She stood slowly, gathering her few possessions. "The difference is, I grew up." As she started to walk away, Travis felt panic rising in his chest. "Where are you going?" "Away from you. Away from this conversation. Away from the reminder of everything I used to be before life taught me that fairy tales don't come true." "Ophelia, Wait! She turned back one final time, and the look in her eyes was the most heartbreaking thing Travis had ever seen. You want to help someone, Travis? Build your community center? Save some other family from going through what mine did? But leave me out of it. I'm too broken for redemption story. As she disappeared into the crowd of commuters, Travis stood alone in the place where they'd once promised each other forever, finally understanding the true cost of the choices he'd made 15 years ago. But understanding was just the beginning, because Travis Kelce hadn't become one of the NFL's greatest players by accepting defeat, and he wasn't about to start now. Even if the game he was about to play was the most important and most impossible of his life. Travis didn't sleep that night. He sat in his Mission Hills mansion, staring at his phone, scrolling through contact after contact of people who could help him find Ophelia. Private investigators, social workers, homeless shelter coordinators, anyone who might know where a former pediatric nurse turned addict might go to disappear. By 6 a.m., he had a plan. It was desperate, possibly career-ending, and almost certainly insane. But it was the only way he could think of to reach someone who'd given up on being reached. "David, I need you to cancel everything," Travis said when his business manager answered on the first ring. "The endorsement meetings, the foundation event, the photo shoots. Cancel all of it." "Travis, it's 6 in the morning. What's going on?" "I'm going to hold a press conference today. I'm going to tell the truth about what happened last night. And I'm going to use every platform I have to find Ophelia Ravencroft." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. "Travis," David finally said, his voice carefully controlled, "that's social suicide. You'll lose endorsement. You'll become a media circus. For what? A homeless woman who clearly doesn't want your help? For someone who deserved better than what life gave her? For someone who fell through every crack our society created while I was getting rich throwing a football? This is career suicide. Then, so be it." By noon, Travis stood outside Arrowhead Stadium facing the largest press gathering of his career. Every major network was represented, along with local news, sports reporters, and entertainment media. Behind the camera, early arriving fans held signs, some supporting, others questioning his judgment. "I want to tell you about a woman named Ophelia Ravencroft," Travis began, abandoning the prepared statement his publicist had begged him to use. "She was the smartest person in our high school, valedictorian, full scholarship to nursing school. She was going to save lives." The crowd of reporters leaned forward, sensing this wasn't going to be a typical athlete press conference. 15 years ago, I left Kansas City to play professional football. I made a lot of promises to a lot of people about coming back, about staying connected to my roots, about never forgetting where I came from. Last night, I realized I'd broken every single one of those promises. Travis paused, looking directly into the cameras he knew were broadcasting live across the country. Ophelia Ravencroft is homeless. She's struggling with addiction. She lost her brother to cancer, lost her career trying to save him, lost her mother to stress and overwork. While all that was happening, I was playing football and making millions and living in a bubble where assistants screen my calls so I don't have to deal with personal matter. A reporter called out, "Travis, are you saying the NFL lifestyle contributed to?" "I'm saying I contributed to it. I let fame and success and the machinery of celebrity turn me into someone who was unreachable to the people who mattered most. I became so insulated from real life that when someone I loved desperately needed help, my own staff didn't think she was important enough to put through." The press corps had gone completely silent. "So here's what I'm going to do. I'm using every platform I have, every connection, every resource to find Ophelia and help her rebuild her life. Not as a publicity stunt, not as a charity, but because it's what I should have done 15 years ago." Travis pulled out a piece of paper with an address written on it. The Travis Kelce Foundation is immediately establishing a 24/7 crisis intervention center at 1247 Main Street. Free services for anyone dealing with addiction, homelessness, medical bankruptcy, or grief counseling. No questions asked, no paperwork required, no judgment. He looked directly into the camera. "Ophelia, if you're watching this, I know you told me to leave you alone. I know you think you're beyond help. But I also know you spent your entire career saving other people's children. And now, there are people in this city who need someone who understands their pain." A reporter from CNN raised her hand. "Travis, what if she doesn't want to be found? What if this backfired?" Then, I'll have learned something about respecting people's choice, but I'll also have created something that can help other families avoid what happened to hers. Travis stepped away from the podium, but the questions kept coming. What about your football career? What about your endorsements? What about the team's reaction? Travis turned back to the microphones one final time. Football made me rich. Football made me famous. But football didn't make me a good person. That's something I have to do myself. As he walked away from the camera, his phone was already buzzing with calls from his agent, team management, and sponsors. Travis ignored them all. He had more important things to do. 3 hours later, Travis stood in the empty storefront on Main Street that would become the Crisis Intervention Center. Contractors were already working. Volunteer coordinators were setting up phone lines, and social workers from across Kansas City were arriving to offer their service. "Mr. Kelce?" A young woman approached him hesitantly. "I'm Sarah Chen, a social worker at the Downtown Mission. I saw your press conference. I think I know where Ophelia might be." Travis felt his heart jump. "Where?" "There's an abandoned warehouse district near the river. A lot of long-term homeless people camp there because the police don't patrol it regularly. But, Mr. Kelce, if she's there, she's probably with some very dangerous people. Drug dealers, people with serious mental illness, people who don't trust outsiders. I don't care. I do. You go in there alone, you might not come out. These aren't people who care about your celebrity status." Travis was already heading for the door. "Then come with me. Help me do this right." An hour later, Travis followed Sarah through a maze of abandoned buildings and makeshift camps. The smell of unwashed bodies, human waste, and something chemically sweet that made his eyes water filled the air. People emerged from the shadows, gaunt faces, suspicious eyes, hands that moved too quickly toward concealed weapons. "You're that football player," said a man missing most of his teeth. "What you want down here?" "I'm looking for someone." "A woman named Ophelia, red hair, about 29. The man laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Lady-o, good luck, man. She don't talk to nobody no more. Been getting worse since yesterday." Travis felt ice in his veins. "What do you mean, worse?" "She scored some bad stuff last night. Been talking crazy ever since. Something about golden boy and broken promises." Sarah grabbed Travis's arm. "We need to call paramedics." "Where is she?" The man pointed to a crumbling brick building with most of its windows boarded up. "Third floor, back corner. But I'm telling you, she ain't herself right now." Travis was already running toward the building, Sarah close behind him. As they climbed the debris-strewn stairs, he could hear voices, some arguing, some crying, some making sounds that barely qualified as human. On the third floor, in a corner room lit only by candle, Travis found her. Ophelia was unconscious, barely breathing, her skin gray and cold to the touch. Next to her lay an empty syringe and a small bag of white powder. "Call 911, Travis said, his voice deadly calm as he knelt beside her. Now, as Sarah made the call, Travis cradled Ophelia's head in his lap, checking her pulse, her breathing, everything he'd learned from years of sports medicine training. "Come on, Ophelia," he whispered. "Don't you dare die on. Not now. Not when I finally understand what I did wrong." In the distance, sirens were approaching. But Travis knew that saving Ophelia's life was only the beginning. The real work, earning her forgiveness, rebuilding her trust, proving that people could change, was going to be much harder than any game he'd ever played if he got the chance to try. The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the intensive care unit at Kansas University Medical Center. Travis sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside Ophelia's bed, watching her chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Tubes and wires connected her to machines that were keeping her alive after what doctors had described as a massive heroin overdose complicated by dehydration and malnutrition. It had been 3 days since they'd found her in that abandoned warehouse. 3 days of touch-and-go medical interventions, induced coma, and conversations with doctors who spoke in percentages and possibility rather than certain. "She's lucky to be alive," Dr. Rachel Martinez had told him that first night. "Another hour, and we would have lost her. Lucky." Travis almost laughed at the irony. Nothing about Ophelia's life in the past 15 years could be described as lucky. His phone buzzed constant, reporters wanting statements, teammates checking on him, sponsors threatening to pull endorsements. Travis ignored them all. The only calls he answered were from Marcus William, who was coordinating with social service, and David Chen, who was somehow managing to run the Crisis Intervention Center while Travis maintained his bedside vigil. Any change? Dr. Martinez asked, entering the room with a tablet full of chart and test results. She opened her eyes for a few seconds this morning, didn't seem to recognize. That's actually progress. The combination of drugs in her system, plus the psychological trauma she's been carrying, recovery isn't going to be linear. Travis looked at Ophelia's face, peaceful and unconscious, free from the pain and anger that etched lines around her eyes. What are her chances? Really? Dr. Martinez sat down in the chair beside him. Medically, she's stabilized. The organ damage isn't as severe as we initially feared. But Travis, addiction recovery, especially for someone who's been on the streets as long as she has, it's not about medical intervention. It's about having something to live for. She has things to live for. Does she? From what I understand, she's lost everyone she cared about. Her career is gone, her family is gone, her sense of purpose is gone. What exactly is she fighting to get back to? The question haunted Travis long after Dr. Martinez left. What was Ophelia fighting for? What could he possibly offer someone who'd already lost everything that mattered to her? His answer came unexpectedly that evening when a small delegation arrived at the hospital. 3 women and 2 men, all carrying flowers and wearing the scrubs of medical profession. Mr. Kelce, the oldest woman, perhaps 50, with graying hair and kind eyes, approached. I'm Nancy Rodriguez, charge nurse at Children's Mercy. We worked with Ophelia before everything happened. Travis stood, shaking hands with each of them. Thank you for coming. We saw your press conference, said a younger man who introduced himself as Dr. James Park, a pediatric resident. We've been looking for Ophelia for 2 years, ever since she stopped showing up at our alumni events. She was the best nurse we ever had, Nancy continued. The kids adored her. Parents requested her specifically. She had this gift for making the worst situations bearable. Dr. Park nodded emphatically. I was a first-year resident when she was on our unit. She taught me more about patient care in 6 months than I learned in all of medical school. The way she could calm a terrified child, or help a family process devastating news, it was extraordinary. Why are you telling me this? Travis asked. Because, Nancy said gently, we think she can get her license back. It won't be easy, and it'll take time, but addiction is classified as a medical condition now. With the right treatment program, character references from former colleagues, and evidence of stable recovery, the nursing board has been more open to reinstatement cases. Travis felt something he hadn't experienced in days: hope. What would that involve? 90 days minimum in a residential treatment facility, Dr. Park explained, then a structured outpatient program, regular drug testing, supervised practice under a senior nurse, community service. It's a long road, but we've seen it work. The question, Nancy said, looking toward Ophelia's bed, is whether she wants to walk that road. Last time we saw her, was convinced she'd destroyed everything she'd ever cared about. Getting her to believe in herself again, that's going to be the hardest part. That night, alone in the hospital room, Travis found himself talking to Ophelia's unconscious form. I know you probably can't hear me, he said quietly, but I need to tell you some things, starting with the fact that you were right about everything. I did become someone I didn't recognize. I did let success turn me into the kind of person who was unreachable when people needed. He reached out and gently took her hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. But you were wrong about one thing. You said some people can't be saved, that some things are too broken to fix. The nurses who worked with you don't believe that. The families whose children you helped don't believe that. And I sure as hell don't believe that. Ophelia's fingers twitched slightly in his hand, but she remained unconscious. I've been thinking about what Dr. Martinez said, about needing something to live for, and I realized that maybe that's the real problem. Maybe you don't need me to save you. Maybe you need to remember that you were born to save other people. Travis pulled out his phone and showed it to her sleeping form, as if she could somehow see it. The Crisis Intervention Center has been open for 4 days. We've helped 37 people already. Families dealing with medical bankruptcy, kids aging out of foster care, veterans struggling with PTSD. But the thing is, we don't have anyone on staff who really understands addiction and homelessness from the inside. We have social workers and doctors and counselors, but we don't have someone who's been where our clients are. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm not asking you to get clean for me, Ophelia. I'm not even asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to consider that maybe your story isn't over. Maybe everything you've been through, the loss, the addiction, the time on the streets, maybe that's not your ending. Maybe that's your qualification. A soft knock on the door interrupted his monologue. A young woman in scrubs peered in. Mr. Kelce? I'm sorry to bother you, but there's someone here who says she needs to speak with you. She's quite insistent. Travis followed the nurse to the family waiting area, where he found a girl who couldn't have been more than 16. She was obviously homeless, dirty clothes, hollow-cheeked, the wary eyes of someone who'd learned not to trust adults. You're the football guy, she said without preamble, the one who's been on the news about Lady O. Lady O? That's what we called her on the streets. She looked out for us younger kids, made sure we knew which shelters were safe, which drugs to avoid. When things got really bad, she'd share whatever food she had. Travis felt his throat tighten. Even at her lowest point, Ophelia had been taking care of people. What's your name? Jessica. And I need you to know something about Lady O. She saved my life. How? I was 15, new to the streets, scared out of my mind. Some older guys were going to hurt me. Lady O stepped in, took a beating meant for me, ended up in the ER with broken ribs. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She never asked for anything in return, just told me to be smart, be safe, and remember that I was worth more than what the streets could give me. I start community college next month because of her. As Jessica left, Travis realized that Ophelia had never stopped being a nurse. She'd just changed her venue from a hospital to the street, her patients from sick children to broken adults. When he returned to her room, Ophelia's eyes were open. How long have she asked? Her voice barely a whisper. 3 days. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck. She tried to sit up, winced, and settled back against the pillows. Travis, I told you to leave me alone. I know, but I'm really bad at following direction. For the first time since he'd found her at Union Station, Ophelia almost smiled. Some things never change. Some things do. I've changed, Ophelia, and I think maybe you have too, just not in the way you think. As he told her about Jessica, about the nurses who wanted to help her get her license back, about the crisis center that needed someone who understood the darkness, Travis watched something flicker in Ophelia's eyes. It wasn't hope, not yet. But it wasn't complete despair either, and for now, that was enough. 6 months later, Travis stood outside the Midwest Recovery Institute, watching through the glass doors as Ophelia led a group therapy session for newly admitted patients. Her red hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, her face had regained some of its color, and she wore the confidence of someone who'd found her purpose again. It had been the longest 6 months of his life. Ophelia had agreed to enter treatment, but only on her terms. No special treatment because of Travis's involvement. No private facility or celebrity perk. She'd chosen a state-run program that served the same population she'd lived among on the streets. She'd earned every day of sobriety through sheer determination and the gradual realization that her pain could be transformed into purpose. She's incredible, said Dr. Patricia Williams, the facility director. In 20 years of addiction medicine, I've never seen someone connect with patients the way she does. She's planning to apply for nursing license reinstatement next month. Travis nodded, his eyes never leaving Ophelia. Think she'll get it? With her track record here, the support letters from former colleagues, and the community service work she's been doing, I'd be shocked if they turned her down. The therapy session was ending. Travis watched as Ophelia hugged each patient goodbye, offering words of encouragement, making sure they had her contact information for their next individual sessions. Even in recovery, she was still taking care of everyone around her. When she emerged from the building, she looked surprised to see him there. "You didn't have to pick me up," he said, but there was warmth in her voice that hadn't been there 6 months ago. "I could have taken the bus." "I know. I wanted to." They drove through Kansas City in comfortable silence, past Union Station where their story had taken its devastating turn, past the Crisis Intervention Center that now bore both their names and served over 200 people a month. "I got some news today," Ophelia said, as they pulled into the parking lot of her transitional housing facility. "The nursing board approved my reinstatement hearing. It's scheduled for next Friday." Travis felt his heart jump. "That's incredible. Are you nervous? Terrified, she admitted, but also excited. I've been working with some of the pediatric cases at the crisis center, and I remembered why I wanted to be a nurse in the first place. Not just to help people heal, but to be there during the worst moments of their lives and help them find hope. They sat in the car for a moment, both aware that their relationship had evolved into something neither of them had expected. Not the young love they'd shared 15 years ago, not a simple redemption story, but something deeper and more complex. "Travis," Ophelia said finally, "I need to tell you something about us." His chest tightened. "Okay. These past 6 months, having you here, having your support, it's meant everything to me. But I need you to understand that I'm not getting clean for you. I'm not rebuilding my life to become someone you can love again. I know that. Do you? Because sometimes I see the way you look at me, and I think you're still trying to save that girl from 15 years ago. But she's gone, Travis. The addiction, the streets, losing Logan and my mother, all of that changed me permanently." Travis turned to face her fully. "Good. Good? The girl you were 15 years ago was wonderful, but she was also naive. She thought love and good intentions were enough to fix anything. The woman you've become understands that real healing requires work, commitment, and the courage to face ugly truths." Ophelia's eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. "I'm falling in love with who you are now," Travis continued, "not who you used to be. The woman who can hold a drug addict's hand while they detox because she knows exactly what they're going through. The woman who can talk a suicidal teenager off a ledge because she's been in that darkness herself. The woman who's strong enough to walk away from a billionaire NFL player because she knows her own worth." "Travis, I'm not asking you to pick up where we left off 15 years ago. I'm asking if you'd be interested in starting something completely new. Two people who've both learned hard lessons about success and failure, about responsibility and redemption." Ophelia was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the modest apartment building that had become her home in recovery. "I used to hate you," she said finally, "for leaving, for not being there when I needed you, for becoming successful while my life fell apart. But mostly I hated you for representing everything I'd lost. And now? Now I realize that hating you was just another way of avoiding responsibility for my own choices. You didn't make me start taking pills. You didn't make me steal from the hospital. You didn't make me give up on myself." She turned to look at him, and Travis saw the full depth of her transformation in her eyes. "But you also showed me that it's possible to change. Not just get clean, not just stop using drugs, but fundamentally change who you are as a person. You went from someone who was unreachable to someone who sits in a hospital room for 3 days with no guarantee the person you're trying to help even wants to be helped." Travis reached over and took her hand, the same gesture he'd made countless times during her recovery. But now it felt different, less desperate, more intentional. "So what happens now?" he asked. "Now, we find out if two people can build something real together after they've both been broken and put themselves back together." 6 weeks later, Travis stood in the hallway outside the state nursing board conference room, wearing a suit and tie, but feeling more nervous than he'd ever been before a Super Bowl. Through the closed doors, Ophelia was presenting her case for license reinstatement, flanked by character witnesses that included Nancy Rodriguez, Dr. James Park, and 3 families whose children she'd helped through the crisis center. The doors opened, Ophelia emerged with tears streaming down her face. For a terrifying moment, Travis thought she'd been denied. Then she held up an official-looking document. "Provisional license," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. 6 months of supervised practice, then full reinstatement. Travis swept her up in his arms, spinning her around in the hallway as other petitioners and board members watched with bemused smiles. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered against her ear. "We did it," she corrected. "We both did it." Teeter. 1 year later, at the dedication ceremony for the Ophelia Ravencroft Pediatric Recovery Wing at Children's Mercy Hospital, Travis watched his girlfriend, his partner in every sense of the word, cut the ribbon on a facility that would help families navigate medical crises without falling into the same traps that had once destroyed her life. Ladies and gentlemen, Ophelia said to the gathered crowd of donors, medical professionals, and families who'd benefited from the crisis center. This wing exists because sometimes our greatest failures become our most important qualification. She looked directly at Travis, standing in the front row with a pride that had nothing to do with football achievement or public recognition. My name is Ophelia Ravencroft. I'm a pediatric nurse, a recovering addict, and someone who learned that it's never too late to come home to yourself. As the applause filled the hospital atrium, Travis thought about the journey that had brought them here. Not back to who they used to be, but forward to who they'd chosen to become. It wasn't the fairy tale ending they'd dreamed about at 18. It was something better, a love story built on truth, forgiveness, and the radical belief that people could change if they were brave enough to do the work. And as Ophelia took his hand and led him toward their future, Travis knew that sometimes the most important victories happened not on a football field, but in the quiet moments when you decided to keep fighting for someone worth saving, even when that someone was yourself.